The Israelites during the reign of the Roman Empire were oppressed for over a millennium, over 1,000 years. First they were oppressed and enslaved in Egypt and in the land of Canaan for 400 years, according to Genesis 5:13. Then they were wandering the desert for over 40 years, till the wicked generation that practiced idolatry was no more. Israel was oppressed 16 times in the book of Judges, while trying to possess the land of Israel, all because they turned from God. The kingdom of King David only lasted as one unified nation for one generation because Solomon was seduced by his many wives to idolatry. Israel was eventually completely conquered and brought into captivity and slavery by the Assyrian Empire by Sennacherib in 2 Kings chapter 18 verse 9. Judea was almost completely destroyed by the Assyrians and later the Babylonian Empire until King Nebuchadnezzar conquered Judea and destroyed Israel. After Israel was laid waste for 70 years, King Cyrus restored Israel and allows Nehemiah and the exiled Jewish people of Persia to rebuild Jerusalem, which is still under Persian rule and later Greek and finally Roman rule. Each empire oppressed and mistreated the Jewish people, and finally Rome wiped out Israel and Jerusalem and commanded a great genocide during the Bar Kokhba revolt. Before Jerusalem was destroyed, Jesus came though, and said, "Love your enemies, bless those who persecute and spitefully use you." Jesus Christ said to embrace the oppressive regime and to love your neighbor and forgive, to turn the other cheek after being slapped and carry Roman soldiers' Persians for more than it required 1 mile, but rather 2. As he was crucified and mocked, Jesus forgave his barbaric executioners, saying, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." St. Paul, who was beaten, stoned to death, or almost to death, shipwrecked, wrongfully imprisoned, and executed, stated, "Don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good," in Romans 12, chapter 21. St. Paul states, "Pray for rulers and dignitaries," which during that time included sadistic Emperor Nero and Caligula, one of which ordered his execution. Jesus and St. Paul changed the world with unconditional love and painfully endured with patience and self-sacrifice, loving and not resisting their unjust enemies for the greater good. After all, we name our sons after Paul and dogs after Nero. The most persecuted minority in all of human history taught great men like Martin Luther King to stand up to persecution without violence and to love their oppressors. These people also valued hard work and sacrifice and understood it was better not to place blame, but to overcome and better themselves and their nation in tangible ways with real results. They had the foresight to place the blame on themselves first for their negative actions, which they labeled as sin, to punish themselves for it. They understood self-discipline, putting family and community first. Hard work is what led to success. In the story of Job, they pointed out bad things happen to good people, but we must not place blame on the world of God, but rather better ourselves as much as possible without resentment. The story of Joseph is a good example. It shows how a person can overcome a system against him by submitting and working hard. Joseph becomes a slave by his envious brothers, but he didn't let revenge get the better of him, and in the end forgives and embraces his brothers. Joseph even tells them that the struggles he overcame was meant for good in God's eyes, and in the end saved the world and his family from starvation. Also, Joseph, with his unique God-given ability of prophecy, is able to take control of a harsh system for a time without violence. The Christian Judeo culture also emphasized individual responsibility and judging people by their works, not what group they belong to. Early Christians allowed all to become Christians and in turn to the family of God. Romans and Greeks, once Jewish oppressors, became the first Gentiles believers of Jesus Christ. Ethiopians from Africa were also among the first believers to enter into the religion. They were also given power to speak in tongues of different languages in order to convert the world, who were both poor and rich, white and black, all people that God made in his image, to become Christians. So a good Christian is not a Hebrew or circumcised, but rather how well a person takes responsibility for their actions and follows the teachings of Jesus Christ. Christ himself, the story of the Good Samaritan, is misunderstood today. Jews living in Jesus' day saw Samaritans as idol worshippers and evil sinners. Telling a story of a Good Samaritan today would be like telling a story about a good Nazi today to a crowd of Jews after the Holocaust. Here we see the wisdom of the King of Peace, that it's better not to demonize a people because they belong to a certain unpopular or demonized group, but to judge the person by their own character and story. We also see this theme in the Old Testament, where Abraham and Lot embraced strangers that turned out to be powerful angels, among them maybe even God himself, and thus saving themselves. The story of the Bible also teaches that we make our own world according to our own good deeds and sins. Those that sin sow death, chaos, disorder, and hatred. Those that are lazy also sow poverty and envy. And envy can transform into malicious hatred and self-pity, unrighteous self-pity. Self-pity that can morph into anger at the world, God, and government. Well, the solution is to take up responsibility, judge ourselves before others, to work hard, not to blame the world or government or God, but to positively change the world peaceably and creatively. To suffer though the world despite how unfair it seems, even if it truly is unfair. To make allies from what were once enemies and give mercy and grace a try. After all, oppressors and enemies of the church were extinct, and the religion of mercy and grace has lasted over 2,000 years, mostly by mere peaceful means. I am Brian Cornelius. Hope you've enjoyed my video and found it interesting and enlightening. I hope you give mercy and grace a try before demonizing a certain group of people, white or black. We are all one race, we all have one blood, and we are all relatives of Adam and Eve, the first creation of God, and we are all made in God's image, and we are all holy, and we all deserve to live eternal and happy lives, no matter who we are. In Jesus' name, I pray that all this horrible hatred and race baiting and the riots and everything will stop, and we'll stop looking at each other as different classes of people. One class that is evil, one class that is good. Instead, look at ourselves as all sinful human beings that need to be forgiven and come underneath the glory of the cross and ask Jesus Christ for forgiveness and to change our lives and become better people and take up responsibility for our own lives. In Jesus' name I pray.